Hey guys, welcome to my YouTube channel and thank you for choosing to watch this video. A little brief introduction about myself before I crack on with the video. I'm Nikhil, a third year graduate entry medical student studying at Southampton. My credibility towards this video is that I've been tutoring medical students on the interview and application process for getting into medical school. I just feel like I've acquired enough knowledge to impart onto the YouTube scene for probably the 5 of you that are watching this video, but hopefully, if everything goes well, a few hundred. So that's my ultimate goal, is just to reach a wider audience, and let's crack on with the video. So personal statements can be a daunting task for even the brightest aspiring medical students. So my personal statement has got me 4 out of 4 medical school interview offers. So I think that it put me in a good stead to talk about the do's and the don'ts when it comes to writing your personal statement. I will also be sharing my very own personal statement in the next video, so keep your eyes peeled for that. So guys, I know exactly how you're feeling about personal statements. I was only in your situation a couple of years ago, so I definitely know what it feels like. My biggest problem, and I'm hoping some of you can resonate with this, was actually starting off the personal statement. I had severe writer's block, and this meant that I only wrote 2 words in a whole week. My name. Good thing was, and this is the first tip for the video, is that I started early, and so that gave me enough time to get an idea and make a start with it. So what were the stakes? The stakes were that I failed to get into medicine the first time after school, which is the usual medicine process. And so writing a subpar personal statement would probably mean that I wasn't going to get an interview offer, and yeah, things would have been difficult. So after reading countless personal statement examples from the ISC Medical Write the Personal Statement book, both the good and the bad, I've managed to formulate quite a lengthy but concise do's and don't lists when it comes to writing the personal statement. And this is what this video is going to be about. It will be going through both the good and bad practices in 3 different phases when it comes to writing the personal statement. The first phase is what you should be doing before you even begin writing your personal statement. The second phase, while you're writing your personal statement. And last but not least, the third phase is when you finish writing your personal statement and are about to submit it on UCAS. Before you start writing your personal statement, and this is probably the step that helped me the most, keep a diary when partaking in work experience. And this work experience can be anything, be from being a bartender, being a waiter, or it could even be all the way to shadowing a GP at a GP surgery. Any work experience, keeping a diary is very essential, and I'll get to why. I've actually been told about the diary idea by my friend who was also applying to medical school, and he's been one of those people who've always kept a diary since he was young. I never really resonated with him. I thought it was lame, but was I wrong? So personal reflection when it comes to work experience for medical interviews, as you might have heard, is probably the most important step, and a diary allows you to do that in a more thorough and critical way. So what should you be writing? Really briefly, jot down what you saw, how did you feel about what you saw, and this is the most important and critical step, is to write down what you've learned from the whole experience. So you can talk about what you've learned about yourself through this experience, and most importantly, how that would be helpful in medicine as a career. Now, I'm not expecting you guys to write a little novel. For me, having a bulleted approach allowed me to, stick to the habit of diary writing throughout my whole work experience. So a diary is just there as a reflective tool, and it's a pretty good one. You could say something like, I was at the GP surgery and I saw the GP breaking bad news to a patient. And this really hit close to home because I've always struggled in this particular communicative skill. So seeing the way the doctor broke bad news, the demeanor, the way that he made the patient feel comfortable was really inspiring to me. And I've definitely taken a few pointers from this one consultation that I'm going to be sticking to for the rest of my life. And you have to link all of this back to medicine, and this is the most important step. So in this example, you can say, I'm aware that being a doctor is not all glorious every single day. And there will be instances where you have to break the disappointing news to a patient. And learning how this is done to soften the blow on the patient, but also be concise so that the patient understands fully the implications of their current situation, is a life skill. And the next tip before you start writing your personal statement is also to read example personal statements. This helped me especially to overcome the severe writer's block that I had. Like I said, 2 words in 1 week, it's not great. It's not a great pace to be setting yourself when you're a couple weeks away from submitting your personal statement. So make sure you read both the good and bad, but I'm hoping this video will save that time. The next big tip before you even start writing your personal statement is to ask yourself the big questions that the universities want you to answer through personal statement. Why medicine? What have you done to learn about it? What have you learned about it? And why will you become a good doctor? So make sure you answer all of these questions in your personal statement. The structure of the personal statement doesn't really matter, but make sure it's just not incoherent. Make sure it has a story and that it flows nicely. This makes it easier for the reader to stick to the story. So how I structured my personal statement was, as you do, start off with the introduction, then you go on to the body, and in the body I talked about my work experiences first, before moving on to the extracurricular activities that I've partaken in, and then end the body with my hobbies. And the body should be the meat of your personal statement. It should have the most amount of words. And then you end by concluding. And what really worked for me was that I tied my introduction with the conclusion as a little continuation that's been broken up by the body of the paragraph. And this sort of helps with the flow and make the reader just say, wow, hopefully anyway. And a final few tips before you start writing your personal statement, really quick, is don't worry about originality. There are thousands of personal statements coming through the door every year by aspiring medical students, and just being bogged up about being unique is very unlikely, and it's not going to happen. There's going to be some overlap with, I don't know, a personal statement from India. And another tip is ignore the character limit to begin with. Worrying about the character limit before you even start writing your personal statement intuitively forces your mind to sort of omit potentially crucial information that you otherwise would have put if you weren't worrying and stressing about a word count. And that concludes the tips before you start writing your personal statement. Now let's get on to the do's and don'ts for when you're actually writing your personal statement. I have to take my glasses because of the glare. Can't afford lighting yet. The first tip might be a bit counterintuitive, but don't start off with the introduction. Now hear me out. Introductions are usually the hardest part to write. Once you've actually written your personal statement without an introduction, writing the introduction is a whole lot easier. This is because you'll have a better understanding on how your personal statement has been laid out, and you can then link the conclusion to the introduction when you're writing it. So everyone's a winner. Second tip, and it's sort of linked to the very first tip that I've talked about in this video, but this is don't expect to write your personal statement in one day. It's a marathon, not a race. And take multiple regular breaks. So what should you be doing when it actually comes to writing your introduction? Hopefully, which is at the end. So don't start off by saying, oh, I've always been good at biology, I've liked doing my friend's biology homework or anything like that, because although it might be true, There's hundreds of people starting their personal statement off with the same example, and you don't want to bore your reader in the very first sentence. But start with a personal anecdote or a personal story. It's called personal statement for a reason. Starting off with a personal story, and don't make it too morbid, but starting off with a personal story would grip the reader and make him or her want to read your personal statement to see if there's some sort of resolution at the end. This all makes your personal statement stick out like a sore thumb, but in a good way. Also, what I've included in my introduction was, and you'll see this in the next video, was saying that your decision to pursue medicine was not spontaneous, it wasn't overnight, it wasn't off of a whim because you saw your friend get into medicine. And rather, it was a time-consuming process of weighing both the pros and cons of a medical career. So the body of your personal statement is probably the most descriptive part, and a really good tip to abide by, or a rule I would say, is show and don't tell. Now what does this mean? Let me just give you an example. Don't just say that you're motivated to find out more about medicine. Tell them what you did to find out more about medicine. This basically helps to tell them that you're a proactive individual who is willing to put in the effort. And like I said before, for me anyway, the body of the personal statement is mainly to talk about work experience. And the most important thing they're looking for is your ability to engage with all walks of life, from a child to an elderly person. And this doesn't have to be in a hospital. It could be anything, like when you have to deal with a really naughty child at the restaurant if you're a waiter. And likewise, how you had to deal with, I know this can be a bit stereotypical, but a grumpy elderly person who didn't like the food, and how you dealt with them. So just make sure that you include a wide range of age groups when you're talking about work experience. And again, link all of this back into medicine. So for example, you could say, dealing with both children and the elderly in my work experience put me in good stead to deal with patients from all walks of life in a hospital setting. And this next tip is more relevant to the people applying for medicine right after school, is mention if you had any preconceived thoughts or pre-made assumptions about medicine and how that's been rectified by your work experience. So for example, when you're 17 or 18 and you go to your first work experience in surgery, your pre-made assumption could be that I just thought the doctor did everything. But people have never been so wrong. And this is where I'll be talking about a few buzzwords that you have to put down in your personal statement. The first one being an MDT, which is a multidisciplinary team. You could say that I've realized and I've learned about the existence of an MDT, which shares the workload amongst different healthcare professionals to optimize patient care. And this would mean that the doctor doesn't have to do everything and burn out, which ultimately can impact the care given to a patient. A few other buzzwords are empathy, communication, patient report, confidentiality, teamwork and leadership. And when it comes to talking about extracurriculars and hobbies, just show that you have a life outside medicine, and this basically will tell them that you can cope with the stress that comes with a medical career. So for conclusion of your personal statement, not this video, it's always good to tell them that you're aware of both the good and bad of a medical career and reaffirm that you're ready for it. A few more tips when it comes to writing your personal statement. So while you're writing, make sure you don't give everything away. Otherwise, you would not give them a really good reason to invite you to an interview. And also, that's what the word limit's for, which is kind of helpful, I guess. So what I'll do is I'll sort of signpost or tease them so that they have something to pick up on if and when they invite you for an interview. So after you've done your first draft of your personal statement, don't just take it upon yourself to chop and change and cut down your personal statement. Send it to as many people as you can, but beware of conflicting advice. At the end of the day, it's your personal statement and you get the last say. And although I said show it to as many people as you can, I would like to add in by saying show it to as many unbiased people as you can. And I would say the more distant the person is, the better, because this increases the unbias when it comes to giving the feedback. Another tip when it comes to finishing off your personal statement is less is more. Be succinct and concise. And don't use big words. Admission committee members can tell if you have a dictionary right next to you. Last but not least, when it comes to writing your personal statement is don't put something in there that you're not prepared to defend. So you can sort of exaggerate, but it has to build upon a truth. So, the tips on what to do after you've finished your final draft for your personal statement. And yes, there are more tips. The first one is, and it kind of links to the last point, is know your personal statement like the back of your hand. Reflect and prepare answers for questions on each and every point that you make in your personal statement. It's good practice and it would prevent any element of surprise when it comes to the interview day. And always prepare for the worst case scenario. So for me, this is going to sound a bit weird. I sort of envisioned as a reader being like a Sherlock Holmes, like a detective who's looking to expose the legitimacy of your personal statement or the lack of. But this mindset really helped me cover all bases. Okay, I don't know how long this video has been and I apologize if it's too long, but I just wanted to tick every box at every stage of personal statement writing. I hope you guys found some value in the video and I hope that you've learned something new, and certainly don't hope that this video has just been redundant. I'll be releasing a video of me going through my personal statement next week, so stay tuned for that. And if you have any questions, just drop them in the comment box below and I'll make sure to answer them promptly.